BlueShellGamer and JRPG Sensei Game of the Year Awards. Super Princess Chaser's Top 10 Favorite Games of 2014. The year 2014 is over and it's time to decide what the past year meant to us. Now remember, this is a list of my favorite games from 2014, not of what the best games were. Without further delay, I'm going to dive right into my top 10 of 2014. Number 10. Freedom Wars. Coming in at number 10 for me is the PlayStation Vita exclusive Freedom Wars. Freedom Wars is a cross between the popular hunting games, Capcom's Lost Planet, and the anime Attack on Titan. The gameplay is broken down into town segments and missions. During the town segments, you can walk around the city and talk to people. During missions, you are put in a battle arena and must fight to complete the objectives given to you, a lot of which are civilian rescue. The game looks great for a handheld title and is one of the first games to really advertise the fact that the Vita games can be played on your TV with the Vita TV. The only real downside of the game is that it gets pretty repetitive and the button mapping for firing your guns is pretty annoying without slowing yourself down. Aside from that, an interesting world and energetic gameplay help the Vita stand out with this one. Number 9. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Retro really proved to the world that they weren't just a Metroid-making machine and knocked another genre out of the park with Donkey Kong Country Returns on Wii. Now they've decided to make a sequel in a similar way to when Nintendo made a sequel to Super Mario Galaxy, and I'm sure as hell glad they did. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of the best games released this year, even without being one of my favorites. It's more of everything from the first game, more stages, more challenge, more variety, and more Kongs to share the journey with. Dixie Kong and Cranky Kong join Donkey and Diddy on their journey and it adds even more variety to the platforming. Add all this to the removal of the worst parts of Returns on Wii, the motion controls, and you have one of the best platformers ever made, modern or not. Number 8. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker was an odd but pleasant surprise from Nintendo during their E3 2014 Direct. Captain Toad first made his appearance in Super Mario Galaxy, but who would ever think he would get his own game? Treasure Tracker is a sort of puzzle game where you make your way from the beginning of each stage to a star stashed somewhere. Captain Toad can't jump, which makes this an interesting game as it's about manipulating your environment and navigating your way through each one. It's surprising something so simple could be so fun, but Nintendo has managed to burn pure joy onto a Wii U disc, and I wouldn't ask for this game to be anything more than it is. Number 7. Middle-earth: Shadows of Mordor. Who knew I'd be placing a licensed game in a top 10 list for favorite games of the year? Middle-earth: Shadows of Mordor tears the throat from 99% of all licensed games in the past forever. Yes, the gameplay is pretty much a copy of the Batman Arkham games, but its added violence and general freedom and performance make it more interesting to play, and that's before even mentioning the incredibly interesting Nemesis system. The game may be fun to play and it may be great looking, but it's practically nothing compared to the Nemesis system, which has you actively creating and defeating bosses and affecting the orcs' ranks with every kill you make. Stories are created every time you play this game, and while you do become a monster that all orcs should fear, which makes sense in regards to the story, none of that matters because before you do, you've created your own tale, and that tale lands Shadows of Mordor at number 7. Number 6. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Pokemon Omega Ruby. Pokemon never really changes, and you'd think that'd be a bad thing. Well, you were right back when the games were in 2D, but now that they are in 3D, the wonder has been rekindled for a time. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby are the most recent in a line of remakes that Game Freak has been putting their oldest generations through. Generation 3 has been glamored up to be on par with the Pokemon X and Pokemon Y, and it manages to be better than what came before it. All I can say is that it's Pokemon, and I've sunk countless hours into this adventure, and more are planned. Number 5. Bayonetta II. Ah, Bayonetta. The lovely witch that lit up 2010 with her seductive way of killing and a combat system that is nothing short of stellar. How could Platinum ever think of topping that shiny diamond? Well, with Bayonetta 2, that's how. Bayonetta 2 is the bigger, badder sequel to Bayonetta, and it brings everything the first game did with more thrown in for good measure. More action, more enemies, more bosses, more playable characters, more side content, more weapons, more everything. The action has been fine-tuned, and it couldn't have been fine-tuned more. Not only is the game better, it also looks and performs better as well, and with the Wii U gamepad you can play without using the TV. Not only that, but the game comes with an improved copy of the first game with Wii U exclusive content. Bayonetta 2 is nothing short of stupendous, and anyone with a Wii U should own this game, and if they don't, they should have bought it yesterday. Number 4. Hyrule Warriors. Hyrule Warriors was not what anyone expected to come from Nintendo, a company that wasn't really known for doing unexpected things. They combined the mindless combat of Dynasty Warriors and the visual theme of Zelda into a gloriously addicting combination. Sure, it's repetitive, and it's not very deep, and yes, the story is basically a fanfic, one that I'm sure I'd write, but it's a lovable shallow puddle, and it's one that I'll be coming back to for a long while as it's packed to the gills with content, including not only a story mode, but also a large mode that offers all types of challenges to complete, and plenty of them are of great difficulty. Another thing to note is the incredibly valuable downloadable content. 2 packs are out and add tons of content to the already bursting game, including 4 new playable characters, and 2 more packs are scheduled for early this year. Hyrule Warriors more than earns high marks from this Zelda fanboy. Number 3. Senran Kagura Shinobi Versus. Now this is one that no one, not even me, expected to make it this far. When I bought it, I thought it was just going to be nothing more than mindless fan service, but to my surprise, I found it was more fun than I expected. I'll be honest, I'm not against mindless fan service as long as it's not too offensive, which is something I haven't personally found yet. In the case of Senran Kagura Shinobi Versus, the gameplay feels like a mix between a brawler and a character action game with some RPG elements added to the mix. It's enjoyable if not a little simple, and the story is more enjoyable than I would have been led to believe. While I will be the first to admit that it's not the greatest game to ever come out of Japan, but it's one of my favorite games coming out of Japan this year. Number 2. Dark Souls 2. Is it any wonder why this game is here? Dark Souls 2 is quite obviously the sequel to the critically acclaimed Dark Souls, and while it does have its fair share of faults, it delivers a game that's as compelling as its father. The gameplay is smoother, more responsive, and it's still as challenging as it's ever been. Not much to really say with this game, as it's easy to understand why it's here just by looking at the previous game. It's a challenging, rewarding, and sad journey through the land of Drangleic, and I wouldn't want it any other way. With this at number 2, what could come next for 2014? Number 1. Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. My number 1 game of the year is Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. It's not surprising at all, at least to me it isn't. I've put close to 100 hours into the game and I haven't even done all that much yet. This is thanks to the random fun of Smash battles and the surprising enjoyment that comes from training an amiibo. While the gameplay hasn't changed a whole lot, it's better balanced, and it feels like every character has a chance of winning, when the updated roster is nothing short of the best in the series. Sure, Snake is missing, and that's disappointing, but the newcomers aren't anything to really sneeze at. The folks at Namco put a lot of love into this game, and it's packed full of Nintendo history and attention to detail like no other. If you are a Nintendo fan at all, you owe it to yourself to play this game. If you are a gamer and don't mind a good Smash, then you owe it to yourself to play this game. It's the top spot in my top 10 of 2014, and I can't think of a better game to be where it stands. Honorable mentions. Kind of as a rule with any top 10 list, there are some that get left out. There are 2 games in particular that I feel I should call attention to, and they are Hatsune Miku Project Diva F2nd for PlayStation 3 and Guilty Gear Xrd Sign for PlayStation 4. Now, just because these games didn't make my list doesn't mean I didn't like them. It's just that some sacrifices had to be made to make the ones I really liked make it on. Hatsune Miku didn't make the list due to it not being any different than the last game, which is fine, but nothing blow away special, and Guilty Gear Xrd is a fighting game, and I suck too hard at fighting games to enjoy them as much as I'd like to. Nevertheless, if you're a fan of either rhythm games or fighting games, give these 2 a look. Anyway, thanks for watching this list, and be sure to check out the other 2 top 10 lists we have coming, which are an experiment I'm trying. Have a great 2015 everyone, and I hope that the games that everyone are waiting for turn out to be great.